Welcome to the Rabia and Sana show. We're two Desi girls reinventing cultural norms with love to make difficult conversations easier to help you take courageous steps faster.
Whether you feel like a misfit now or have been breaking the standards, this podcast is for you, for the adults, the young. Come as you be and become your authentic self as you desire. Let's go reinvent some cultural norms together.
Hello everyone, I am Rabia Paracha. I have been a rebel without a cause for most of my life until I discovered my purpose to empower women to empower themselves. And that led me down a rabbit hole to become a life coach from CTI Coactive Coaching. And today I'm a mind and life power coach who helps people break free of their limiting cultural beliefs to find the life they love and the love of their life.
Hello everyone, I am Sana. I am from New Jersey, a Pakistani American. Professionally, I work in the clinical research field. And personally, I have always had this purpose of empowering women of South Asian culture to be able to live the life that they want to live and be true to themselves instead of what the culture expects them to be. And so here I am pursuing that purpose, and I am also studying to become a life coach. Let's get started.
Hello, amazing souls. Welcome to another episode of the Rabia and Sana Show, the podcast where we reinvent cultural norms to elevate your mental, emotional, and relationship well-being. I'm Rabia Paracha.
And I'm Sana Shah. Today, we're diving into a subject that's deeply personal, yet universally impactful: ADHD, self-awareness, and cultural norms. We have our guest, Shehzad Qureshi, who brings a unique perspective on how he embraced ADHD and redefined norms. Welcome, Shehzad. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you both. It's a pleasure being here. You ladies are doing amazing work, and I'm glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, I was born in Pakistan, studied in America, electrical engineering, practiced there, and then went into consulting in Canada in 98. I'm now an ADHD coach and focus really on helping young adults and professionals in their journey to really leverage their strengths of ADHD and manage their challenges. This is really something I'm passionate about and excited about. I'm happy to be here and help people in their journeys.
Amazing. I'm sure your journey with ADHD couldn't have been easy. You've got this passion to empower others. How did you navigate and embrace your journey, and what can you tell us about what led you to your ADHD diagnosis?
Sure. Ever since I was a kid, I was really good at things like problem solving and math. And I remember a teacher placing me in higher classes because of my math. And so studies was never a problem for me. And I went into engineering. Things were fine. A lot of things went well in terms of problem solving, in terms of hyper focus. I was really, really good in all these areas. There was a couple areas that, however, I did have challenges with, especially inattentiveness. And that's something that I've struggled with, unfortunately. And over time, I've gotten better, especially with coaching.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about, you were saying in the form as well that you felt underrepresented. Can you elaborate on that a little bit as well?
One thing I want to say is ADHD is part of a neurodiverse spectrum, right? And everyone is different. They have their own story, their own journey. In my case, I mentioned the school part was okay, but I think some of the anxiety, being able to relax with people, those kind of things, I have had problems in. And it's really something that I didn't really know how to get along with people. And so that was something like I was kind of a misfit, I think. I did have some friends, but I wasn't quite the popular person. I think a lot of that was ADHD. Underrepresented, definitely, because honestly, especially as a person with ADHD and a South Asian, I feel like you kind of feel like you're the only one. And and when you tell people, in the community, they don't know about it. So that's where I really feel underrepresented.
Mhm. So when did your diagnosis happen, Shehzad?
It was about a year and a half ago.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's very recent. Yeah.
so you in your academic life, school, I'm sure you already had a career, you were done with school and things like that, and now at an adult age, you're diagnosed with ADHD. So tell us how that experience was for you to getting diagnosed at an more mature age.
Yeah. Yeah, I was mentioning that there were certain strengths that I've always felt I had, which kept me going. But one challenge that I had, I was talking about inattention, that really created a lot of work-life balance issues. And about a year and a half ago, I was working on this large consulting project, it was a large transformation, and it was just, I was managing a team, managing long hours, and the biggest challenge I had was sometimes I would miss certain things, and because of the high profile of the project, it was causing me a lot of stress. And you know, I was working long hours, and my wife would say, "You're working towards your grave." And I wanted to really stop that and step back a little bit and go on a discovery journey so that I could improve myself and improve life for those around me. And that's where I took some time and, went on this journey to really discover myself, what were some of the challenges I had, and try to, I guess, kind of use my consulting background to map it with what's out there. And when I did some research, talked to people, I found out there's something called ADHD where, inattentiveness is common. And I could not believe that. I thought this is just something wrong with me, right? And so then I said, okay, looks like this is what it is. So that's the problem solving I did. And then I went to the doctor who had known me for 15 years and knew the work struggles I had, the challenge, was causing me pain in my body, all those things. He didn't mention anything about it. So I said, do you think it could be ADHD? He says, yeah, possibly. And I said, what should I do? How do I get diagnosed? He says, well, contact this place. And so I did. And, they said, yes, I do have ADHD. And the type of ADHD that I do have, it's number one, the inattentive type. And I knew that already. But, and the second type is the hyperactive impulsiveness. Now, hyperactive, when you're young boys, especially, they're hyperactive, a lot of energy and so on. Some people can kind of get that they may have ADHD. I was not one of those, but my mind is always, it doesn't shut down. And, it could be 11 o'clock and I'm thinking of things, and my wife is like almost asleep, and so that is the hyper active. And then the impulsiveness was there in terms of interrupting people, taking impulsive actions. I kind of knew that, but at least it justified that it wasn't just me because I was doing stupid things. I had some, I guess, the way my mind worked is basically how I had to react with.
Mhm.
Neurodivergency, I guess it's in that scope of things, right? And what a relief I think it might have been once you had that diagnosis to feel that there's nothing wrong with you versus something that you can not manage and there's something wrong with you. So my question is, once you're diagnosed, how do you tell your family? Your wife is somebody that's close to you. She probably totally
Yeah.
understood. But the other people in your life, how was that like to share it with them? And what was their response?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, firstly, I was very relieved because, once you know what you're dealing with, that's something you can do something about it. So I was definitely very relieved. I did kind of think, why didn't I know this earlier? But, that is life, better late than never. In terms of, You mentioned my wife. Once I knew that this is what I had, she had to answer some questions and so on as well, which led to the diagnosis. But they asked questions about, how were you as a kid? And, there's a lot of things my mother obviously doesn't remember. I don't remember, but my wife knows me well. She was able to answer certain things. And so she understood what it was. And then what I did is I really got into it with passion. I bought this book called Driven to Distraction by Dr. Edward Hallowell and John Latey. It's a wonderful book, and I gave it to my wife, and she read it. And it's been quite actually good for our relationship because she has a better understanding of it. I would strongly recommend that book.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so yeah, the rest of the family and friends, that was something else because honestly, I told others, but they didn't seem to really get it. I guess honestly, I didn't get it either before. I always laughed at, people, oh, that guy has ADHD, doesn't pay attention. I guess so. Those others people also kind of didn't really understand it. So it was a bit disappointing, I guess. Close friends, there's one friend that I was very close with. When I told him about it, I mean, he's been living in North America forever. When I said I have ADHD, he's like, what is that? As if it's something from Mars or something. But he didn't even know what it was. He didn't know what it stood for. And then I told another friend, and he was like, you don't have ADHD. No, you're smart, you're working, you're doing this. I know you don't have it. And it's like, what do you say to someone? So that was hard. That was hard. And then after that, I did tell a colleague and who really looked up to me. And I noticed a little bit of a change in her behavior afterwards. So I was a bit careful in letting people know. You have to be, I think, a little bit careful about who you let know because there are still some stigmas around it.
Totally. There's so much stigma around that, especially in our Desi community. I
Yeah.
feel like all of the diseases that are related to mind are really even harder for us to convince our Desi community that this is
Yeah.
real, this is
Yeah.
happening. So I think that's really powerful, Shehzad, on how you really took charge of your own health and you went internally and kind of self-diagnosed yourself, right? And you really brought it out. So can you tell us a little bit more detail about that personal journey of yours that you took on taking charge of your health and getting into diagnosing yourself? What was that like for you?
Great question. So, when I look at some people, they're very self-aware. It seems like they've already gone through a self-discovery journey. I think I hadn't. And going through that self-discovery journey was amazing. I found out so much about myself. And I think it should be something that everyone should do as soon as they can, because the more you know about yourself, the more you can deal in a better way with others at work and personally. Otherwise, you're really working in a vacuum. So that was really, really powerful for me to learn more about myself. And I'm glad I took the time and energy to do that. And in terms of the ADHD itself, there wasn't too much of a surprise, but it did kind of help me understand, what were some of the challenges I had and how to deal with them. One of the things that I should say is it was once I knew that I had ADHD, I engaged in an ADHD coach. That was something that was recommended by, one person in the clinic. And also I did some research. I always need to get to the bottom of it. I need research. And there's a lot of research to indicate that ADHD coaching is very powerful for people with ADHD. So I hired an ADHD coach, and the journey that I did, he empowered me to do that journey. And, there were some challenges, there was some more reflection that I think if I did it on my own, I would not have been able to do as well. So I was really thankful to having a coach.
Yeah, coaches are so good because they help us see things about ourselves that we have blind spots for.
Exactly.
And not with the ADHD journey, but I can totally understand, and I'm sure Sana can as well, about that self-awareness. And when you get to think that there's nothing wrong with you, this is how you are, and it's a part of your identity. My son also, as a child, was diagnosed. And back then, there was such little information. It's so great that we can have people like yourself who are advocates and are helping and spreading the word about ADHD. So, being from the Pakistani South Asian culture, traditionally men are not very open about how they feel. You know, there are many exceptions. I believe you are one of them. Can you tell us about the challenges that you encountered to break these cultural norms? And you were saying earlier that you were cautious about who you shared with. Tell us about some of the challenges that you encountered between being cautious and exposing yourself.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the one example with the colleague, that was one. For example, when I went on LinkedIn, there were some people that didn't quite understand, this guy who's, worked in consulting and engineering, he's posting this about himself and so on. There were some people that didn't quite get it. But then, there's a lot of people that, supported me as well, either on LinkedIn or separately. So I really, I want to look at it positive and really reflect on that. But if I may, back to what you were saying, I'd like to say that I'm different from many South Asian men in that regard, but I guess I was a bit fortunate. I studied in American schools because my father was with the UN. I studied in the US, and in fact, I remember I was, in Pakistan, and there was some company event, and there was a women's sports thing, and my wife went to that, gave my daughter to me, and I was, in Lahore, Pakistan, feeding my daughter with the bottle, and my colleagues are like, Shehzad, what are you doing? It's as if I was committing a crime by, feeding my child. So there's certain traditions. Unfortunately, things are changing. Thankfully, they are changing. I see now a lot of men, for example, helping wives and looking after kids a lot more. So that's wonderful. But it's kind of what you're, I guess, used to. And one thing that I did not realize until I did the self-discovery, my late father, was a wonderful man, but he did have anger issues. And honestly, the way in the past, the generation, it was different, especially with men, were more authoritative and stuff like that. And I understand that, but I guess what I didn't realize is that sometimes I would be authoritative. I would be really angry with my kids. I remember my mom says, just keep it down. My wife would say that, but I actually thought it was normal because my dad had done it. I mean, it wasn't like all the time. He was a wonderful person. I love him. And, but he did have outbursts, and so did I. But I didn't really see, I was like, what's the big deal? And so, this discovery really helped me realize that no, it is not okay. It is not okay. And, I hope that more and more South Asians would do this, especially men, to realize that some of their actions are not okay, even if they're being practiced, even if the South Asian media still shows. That's what I would certainly say.
You make such an important point. It's so important for us to challenge those cultural norms
Mm-hmm.
that we've just made acceptable and normal because they're harmful. With all this stigma around mental health and neurodiversity, is there a piece of advice you can give to someone to help them come to terms with that?
Yeah, so definitely. So again, I would say that self-discovery is where it starts with, if you feel that you're misfit or underrepresentative or have any issues at all, we all have issues. again, this should be neurotypical or neurodiverse. Everyone should go on this journey of self reflection. But I think for neurodiverse, it's a little bit more important to go through that. And once you do that, you'll understand more things about yourself. And, thankfully, there's so much social media. There's this show. There's so many ways to find out once you know yourself to how really you can map up with different conditions, whether it's autism, ADHD, or anything else, and then embrace it is what I would say, because you wouldn't be the same person if you didn't have this condition, right? And then after that, I think it's important to seek out the support that is needed, seek out the structure, seek out um, the systems that you need to be successful. And lastly, if you are able to find an accountability partner, because with ADHD especially, accountability is tough. And, I would say do not have your spouse as your accountability partner. Spouses are wonderful. I've been married for 30 years, wonderful support from my wife, but that just creates different dynamics. I strongly recommend personally that based on my experience, a coach is someone who's removed from you, and coach will work with you to see what system works for you to hold yourself accountable, because in the end you have to hold yourself accountable. It's not someone else, but a coach empowers you to do that. So those are some of the things that I would say are important. And there's so many neurodiverse people have so many strengths. I mean, whether you look at celebrities like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and so many others, there's so many strengths that they have. But then there's also the challenges and weaknesses, and it's really just a matter of really leveraging your strengths, because there are many, and at the same time, really knowing how to manage your weakness or challenges.
And that kind of ties into what you were saying earlier about knowing yourself. So
Yeah.
knowing your unique strengths, because now you know that you have this, and then knowing your unique weaknesses as well. So you know how you can manage them. That's really great. And, I just wanted to add that one of the inspirations that Rabia and I had for this podcast was to get our DAC community to start thinking about the self-discovery journey and the self-awareness journey, and to reinvent cultural norms, really, because our cultural norms get in the way, sometimes of that self-discovery challenge. So I think that message that you're putting out there is really, really great for that purpose as well. So Shehzad, tell us a little bit more about how you got into this of raising awareness in the community, and also becoming an advocate, and also becoming a coach as well in this field.
Yeah, as I was saying, everyone has a different journey. I guess I'm at this point in my life where things like money and materialistic things are not as important for me. And, I've been looking for, what is my why? What is my purpose every day to get up? And really, I just want to be the best version of myself that I can be for my friends, for my family, for my wife, for everyone. And then I want to give the best person of myself to others so that they can benefit. So that is really what I'd like to do. I mean, there's so many young people with ADHD. If I were to look back, if someone had helped me when I was 19, there was a coach, I would have, made some different choices. So, if I can help people transform their lives, that is to me amazing. And coaching is something that honestly, I think it's a relatively new profession. If it wasn't for ADHD, I would never have known about it. I've heard about coaches, but there's like varied media publicity out there. Sometimes there's not a lot of good image. I did not think much of coach, but honestly, the more I learned about coaches, I've learned that some of the celebrities I mentioned, Bill Gates and others, they all have coaches, and it is such a powerful thing. So when I actually experienced it myself and the changes that I was able to make, I was like, wow, that is what I need to do to help others. And I bring, my professional experience as an engineer, as a consultant, lived experience as someone with ADHD, and as my coaching experience in the ADHD sector to really let the community know more about ADHD. And I've been telling people, starting with my friends, relatives, and then going out in the community. I volunteer as well, a couple organizations. So, it's great to always tell people about what ADHD is, because a lot of people just don't know it. And those stigmas are still there. And definitely more in the South Asian community, but honestly, it's not, even in the other communities, it's just surprising that a lot of people just don't know. I, I wish that I hope that we have a system where doctors can pick up on ADHD cues and recommend, young kids to go ahead rather than, someone like me waiting all their lives. So, if there's any change that I can make, even in one person, I'd be very, very happy.
Yeah, that's amazing because, educating people, inner awareness is great, but external awareness is also very necessary. When we were younger, mental health wasn't even spoken about, and now we see all these branches of
Yeah,
ADHD being one, depression, anxiety. Like there's so many things, and sometimes all these things are interconnected. So just
yeah,
because you're sharing this with the world and starting in your space, it's amazing because it sounds like you are reinventing cultural norms for people with ADHD, especially people in our generation, right? Because that's where the diagnosis was missed, and you
yeah,
feel like you wonder why midlife crisis happens, right? You wonder why people feel like something's missing, something's not right. And you were also talking about purpose and passion,
yeah,
and, and having a real connection to something deeper than just paying the bills, getting the
yeah,
education, having the family. Like there's something more. And I think one of the things is we develop relationships with everyone and we don't with ourselves.
yeah.
And that is one thing we are reinventing, like Sana was saying as well, this with self-awareness. So tell us, why is it so crucial for a person to seek personal growth? Why? Like, I mean, if you could bottom line it and tell us the benefits, like on the other side, what does it bring to you?
Well, I think, the way we are raised and nurtured, or the way we sometimes get into certain habits, we are susceptible to blind spots. And those blind spots make us feel, for example, that something is not possible, or something is wrong, or something is right, and all those things. But it's only when you grow yourself that you can really understand for sure what is possible, what is not possible, and not have those blinders, because we live in a society with social media and everything. There's a lot of negativeness, but it's really up to us to grow ourselves. It's not up to anyone else. And if you go through this journey of self-growth, you can really grow your mindset, grow your career, grow your self-esteem, improve your health. There's so many areas that self-growth leads to, rather than sticking to kind of a narrow fixed mindset of just doing what it is that you're doing. So that's where I think a coach really helps.
I love that message. And Rabia and I did an episode earlier on when we started our podcast on no one is coming to save you. And we and sometimes women in the Desi culture, we have this mentality that someone is gonna come, even spiritually, or God or your parents or somebody's going to come to save you. But really, it's your own responsibility, your growth, your self-discovery. Your journey is your own unique journey.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love that.
Honestly, if I may, like, I know religion is important, and I don't want to discount it, but some people do have a tendency to, say God will take care of it. I think, like you said also, or, but in the end, it is your responsibility. I think it's kind of hard, for God to manage each and every person's actions and so on. So I think, especially in the South Asian community, I think sometimes we need to be a little bit more accountable of our actions rather than blaming a third party, whoever it is, and not be victims. And honestly, that's one thing that I've seen in the West where, people, you'll see amazing, amazing stuff done. I mean, I just, every time I'm amazed by some of the wonders that have been achieved in this world. And it's because these people thought that they can do it, and they accomplish big things. And if they just let others mess them up or be the victim, they would not have accomplished those things. So I think all those things are possible. Everyone does different big things. Everyone is not a scientist. Everyone is not a pilot or whatever it is, Wright brothers. But everyone, I think, can do big things if they really let themselves grow and do it.
You know, what I'm hearing from you is that your mess is your message. Having something happen to in our lives, we are victims, but we don't have to
Yeah,
stay victims.
exactly.
And the way that happens is through accountability and
Mhm.
responsibility, because God only helps those who help themselves. And you've created a ripple effect. You are taking your mess, you've made it your message, and now you're paying it forward. And I think that's so brilliant. And I mean, we need more people like you to, not to be ashamed and to stay small and isolated because they have ADHD. They're labels, but they're also empowering when you take ownership and accept where you are, how you are. That's beautiful. And I think that's a massive lesson that it takes time to learn. It just doesn't happen. What do you wish someone had told you? And what other lessons have you learned as well?
Yeah, great question. I mentioned some of my strengths, and I also mentioned a key challenge, inattentiveness, and you know that that really messed up my work-life balance in consulting and project managing because there's expectation that if you're leading something that you're not going to miss something, right? And yes, some of my qualities, my strengths outweigh the others, but it caused a lot of stress in my life. Instead, if I had known long time before, if I was more self-aware, I would have actually gone into a different type of career where more creativity, hyper focus could have been used, could have been sales, it could have been so many other professions. But electrical engineering, it's basically ones and zeros, right? So if you don't have much of a tolerance for a mistake, and even in engineering, I would, for example, make some mistakes, and that would cost me. And again, it was very stressful. So I would have gone maybe, like I said, into business, MBA. I did end up doing an MBA, but I think I would have done it a long time earlier. So honestly, one thing I would say to anyone is once you know more about yourself, your strengths and challenges, and your passions, passion is also very important. Once you know yourself and your passions, choose a career accordingly. I was actually very fortunate that, you know, my parents never encouraged me to, go like most South Asians, doctor or lawyer or engineer. However, I was, like I said, really good at math and all that. And I was like, I want to be a robotics engineer. And I guess did a most sabotage on myself because I was like, okay, I have to do this. And this is, there's no way out. And I put all this pressure on myself. Whereas a lot of South Asian community, of course, when you know that, let's say, your son or daughter is neurodiverse, then they will think, okay, they're not going to be an engineer, they're not going to be a doctor, whatever it is. And even people who come from countries like Pakistan, come here, they still think that those are the careers they have to do, whereas the world is your oyster here, right? You could really be anything that you want to be. So what I want to say is that just understand yourself, understand what you're best able to do and what best you want to, and don't fit yourself into some of a mold or label because of ADHD. And I would really appreciate if all the parents here would, also do that, because in this country, especially, you could be a great lawyer, you could be a great human rights person. There's so many areas that people with ADHD can go into. And yes, if they want to be in engineering or computer science, all power to them, like Bill Gates. I'm not stopping. But if they feel that they do have a disadvantage like I did, choose a career accordingly, because that can really change the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So true.
Or be a coach like you are now. That sounds like an awesome creative.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a journey. I don't regret any of it, but you know, I if I can help change anything based on what I learned, that would be powerful, because just you enjoy your life a lot more. You enjoy school, you enjoy all those things a lot more than perhaps I did.
Choose your career wisely. I love that.
Yeah.
And choose your career based on your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big misconception of ADHD that people have, is they think this person is weak, this person is
Yeah.
disabled, this person cannot
Yeah.
carry out a job.
Yeah.
But you're so right that there's other creative things or other passions that they may have that they could pursue. Right. So what other misconceptions are out there for ADHD? Just want to know that. What else do you think? How is it also misled as what do people think about ADHD right now?
Yeah, so it is changing. I must say, especially some of the big companies, consulting companies, they actually want to hire neurodiverse people, because they know that they're creative, they know that they're smart, and having them along with neurotypical makes sure you have more stronger teams, basically. And the norming, storming, and so on. If you have people from different cultures also, for example, it leads to better teams. So it is changing, but it's only changing in some organizations. There's still a lot of room to grow. Unfortunately, there is still this thinking that it's a disability. And I mean, I must say that, again, there's a spectrum. There could be some people that it is unfortunately more of a disability than mine. So I don't want to undermine that. But again, what I know is that anyone who has a disability, even, for example, if you're not able to see, there's other things that eventually become stronger, whether it's your hearing, whether it's your, legs, or whatever it is. And you've seen that in many, many examples in people. And so I would say that just because, if it is a disability in one area, you still have so much locked potential in other areas, and you just have to, get the diamond from the rough. You have to uncover it, because there's a lot of potential you can get out of it. So, it's honestly, I've been watching movies about discrimination against women, Black women, and so on, and Blacks. And, it's really troubling how people actually thought that, women, I think it's the 688. There's a movie that I was watching yesterday, and this Black woman in the army, where the commanders think that they are inferior because they're Black and they're women. And, just to judge or label someone without actually knowing them, I think it's a crime, honestly, that I hope that everyone should realize that they may be guilty of, and work towards improving their approach.
Yeah. And, you're so right. There's always an opportunity to improve. And it's never too late. It's never too late to understand yourself better. It's never too late to have that diagnosis that you need. I think it's really important. Sometimes in our culture, it's like, I'm too old now. I can't change. I hear this from so many people. I
Yeah,
think that what I'm hearing from you, it's never too late. And
yeah,
take that initiative, know yourself better, and do things differently. right? Do things differently because we get so accustomed, especially in the Desi culture. We're
Yeah.
so fixed in our ways. Traditions are so important.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's that shame piece that we could probably have a whole day's conversation with when it comes to these things. But yes, and I totally agree. Let's do things differently. Let's create awareness, like you're watching a movie and you're noticing things that you may
Yeah.
not have noticed 10 years ago
Yeah.
because of this personal journey. So
Yeah.
I want to ask one small question, and you've already answered this, but I want
Hmm.
to probe a little bit. And any regrets? Do you have any regrets along your journey as you reflect back?
I actually don't believe in regrets. I think regrets are not productive. There's obviously some things that you wish could have been different. I don't know if it's really a regret. And I think it's always good to focus on the positive because I think the regrets generally make you think that you're a victim, like we were talking about earlier. So I don't have regrets, but I do wish that things will change in the future. And we've come a long way. I studied in American schools. I had asthma, and even that wasn't something that people were aware about. And I used to do physical education as the first class, and I hated it. And there wasn't even enough in an American school, back in the 70s about awareness that, okay, if you have asthma, you shouldn't. So, things have improved for asthma patients, at least in the West. Things have improved for ADHD in Canada and so on. I think, as a global, there needs to be more awareness, and I'm really happy that, you're doing a great job in creating this kind of awareness in our community, especially. Everyone should really know that, all these things, whether asthma or whatever it is, autism, these are not disabilities. And then, what you can do about them, because once you're empowered, you can do something about it. And I guess I just wish I'd known it back then. That's all I could say. And you know, um, when I look back, as I was saying, if I didn't have ADHD, I wouldn't be the person I am. Maybe, I've been married, happily married for 30 years, wonderful wife who's been very supportive. Maybe that would have changed. Maybe something in my career would not have been as great if I didn't have it. So, I'm fine with it. But what I do know is that everyone is not so fortunate. I've had really supportive parents who've given me a lot, and generally we're blessed with that in the South Asian community. But I know people here that I've met, young kids who really don't have a lot of support, And honestly, there's one person I met who, said to me as a young kid that I don't really understand what's happening in school. I don't get it. And so he ended up playing just video games all the time. And so, you know, I cannot change things for myself, but if I can reach people like that, and they can make a change in their lives, because it would be sad for someone to lose out because they didn't know enough about what they could do to change themselves.
So true. And the two things that I'm picking up from what you said is start sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
Question if something's
Mm-hmm.
not feeling right, something's not working.
Yeah.
Question it a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe start that self-awareness journey.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I really think is important is that you're not alone. Once you do speak up and
Yeah.
you find others that are
Mm-hmm.
like you, so you don't feel isolated and alone.
Mm-hmm.
And striving to be the best version of yourself. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm hearing from you, and that's sort of your legacy almost. I want to be a better version of myself. So I think those things are just amazing. And it's been such a pleasure to have you today. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's really been eye-opening as well to hear a man's perspective because women speak very openly and they
Mm-hmm.
share their things. And when I saw your post on LinkedIn, just, it just captured my attention because not too many people do share in that way openly. So I think
Yeah.
it's very admirable, and I wish a lot of success in being this coach. I'm sure you're going to make a huge impact. I'm sure you already are. So thank you so
Thank you.
much for being here.
Thank you so much, Shehzad, for coming on. Your journey is really inspiring. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you both. I really enjoyed this. And again, you're doing wonderful work, and I'm really happy that I could be part of it today.
Right. So if our listeners and viewers want to reach out to you about struggling with ADHD, how can they reach out to you?
Well, the best way is through my website. So it's I have ADHD.ca. So again, it's I have ADHD.ca. You can, get more understanding of some of the issues and challenges around ADHD, some of the strengths of people with ADHD, what are the support systems out there, and you can reach out, and I'm happy to help you. I do free discovery calls. If there's anything, I can even point you to different directions, and even if you don't use my coaching, I don't mind. I just want to be able to help others. The other way is certainly by email, which is my first name, Shehzad.K, my last name, Qureshi, @gmail.com.
Thank you. And all of this will be listed in the bio for our listeners.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Shehzad, once again.
Well, that time of the episode, Sana.
Yes, Rabia. We are two Desi girls
Reinventing cultural norms.
with love.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Please rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow the Rabia and Sana Show on social medias.
Remember, you can watch the video version on YouTube, and don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.
If you want life coaching services, or you are reinventing cultural norms for yourself and think you would be a great guest and want to be on our show, please email contact@therabiaandsanashow.com.
And be sure to check out our next episode. See you next time.
See you next time.